Yeah.
Okay, we're at 6 o'clock. I'm gonna call the meeting to order.
Joe, your personal agenda item. And so Joe's here with Nortex, Dennis, and is it Mario? Is that right? Mario. Yeah, and so Joe, I know Joe and Larry have been in communication talking, so I'm gonna turn it over
Dennis
to
and
you.
Mario, my bodyguards.
In Lakeside City, you need them.
Yeah.
My name is Joe Gamble. I am the Director of Community and Economic Development for Nortex Regional Planning Commission. I'm also a retired city manager. So I bring a little bit of knowledge to the problem. The question was, and we might as well just get it out in the open right off the bat, do we have a grant? The answer is no. There are no grants. The main problem with that is that your median family income is higher than what the grants will allow. The grants typically are low to mod income, which is 80% of the average income in Archer County. So you are significantly higher than that, and that excludes you from the community development block grants and some of the Texas Water Development Board grants as well. The only thing that would be available to you to resolve your problems are low interest loans. And there are several entities that can make that to you. However, I'm wondering, and please forgive my lack of awareness, but I wonder even if you're at that stage yet in defining truly what the problem is, looking at all the solutions, and then figuring out which is the best option. As I look over the city, I look over a small topo map. You have a lot of issues that need to be addressed before you even make a decision on which route to go. That's why I would suggest you look at a planning program, a long-term planning program. One source for that possibly may be the Pretty Foundation. They may very well, and Eric, I brought y'all a lot of information. More than you'll ever want to know. There's the Pretty Foundation. The Pretty Foundation, I'm not really clear as to whether or not it will fund this type of study, but the things that you're going to need to look at in the study is first land use. And what you have to consider is there any potential growth outside your present boundaries? Or is there going to be growth outside your boundaries that are going to contribute to your issues, either through infiltration, inflow, or runoff? And do you need to plan for that? You need to then decide what's going to go where. I mean, is there going to be a commercial part? Is it all going to be residential? Are you going to allow multifamily? And if so, where? Then after you look at that, then you have to look, of course, at your water and your wastewater, and you've got to start doing some of the math. For instance, the details show that the average occupancy in Lakeside City is 3.2 people. They'll have an average daily use of 100 gallons of water per day per person, 70 to 80% of which will be returned into the wastewater. So there's some very rough numbers right there that you can start adding and multiplying and getting to a volume. In the old days, and I'm not sure what the numbers are looking at now, but in the old days, a treatment plant would cost you $1 a gallon. So if you're building an 8 million gallon treatment plant, you're going to pay $8 million more. So, and that's not even including the collection system. So you have to put that in. Then, once you're planning the collection system, how are you going to gravity flow it? How many lift stations are you going to have? Where they have to be. The more lift stations you have, the more problems you have, the more costs you have. Then you have the issue of part of the city here, there's an inlet, and the rest of the city is over there. Do you have 2 plants or do you have 1 plant? Where do you put it? And so these are things that you need an engineer to work on. And I would tell you, it would probably take a good 6 months at the earliest from the time you get funding to be able to see that map and see that drawing. The other option then is septic tanks. And I know you have an abundance of them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as they're properly maintained and they are of a style and a form and a fashion that meets your needs. That would require an ordinance and enforcement. That would shift the burden of the cost to the individual homeowner rather than a percentage cost based over all of the occupants or users. But so then you got to work the math on that. Which is better? And how do you enforce that? And what do you do to resolve those penalties or those failures? The easiest approach for the city, and it is probably the ugliest approach for the city, is to come to say, if we have a system failure, we will give you X days to repair that failure, and at the end of that time, we will be citing you to court every day that goes on after that failure notice has been given to you. And those fines could go as high as $1,000 per day. Now, again, that's a terrible way to go about it, but that is an option for you. I think from what little bit I know and understand, that doing nothing is not an option. I've been in situations where we've tried that. The state, we had a sewer plant that just wasn't big enough to do the job. And the state came in and shut the city down. Could not build a building, a house, anything, nothing, dead. So $9 million later, we got fixed in 13 municipal utility districts inside the city limits. We were growing, but we were growing really, really fast. So we were doing land use plans 5 years in advance. So we could figure out, how do we get the sewer to it? How do we get the water to it? What do the roads look like? Where do they have to be? What kind of resident? All of this, you need to have a concept of, and you need to have enforcement of. I think you're probably on the verge of some rapid growth. I think that potential is here. As the work on the lake improves and it gets more scenic and more user-friendly, you're going to see some growth wanting to come out in this area. And you need to be able to decide what growth, where, and when. Typically what you find in the rapid growing cities is either you take control and make it happen, or the builder takes it in control and makes it happen. And they don't always get along. So that's why looking at it, doing the research, doing the study, starting with the land plan, figuring out line sizes, locations, lift stations, flow data, permitting costs, all of that. And then you go for another loan, or you do a certificate of obligation, or you could even do some bonds, long-term bonds to pay for it. I would tell you, personally, I would look to the long-term bonds. Well, let me take that back. I don't know that anymore. They changed the laws now. There was a time you could deduct your taxes off your income tax. I think they don't do that anymore. They just give you a credit. So there's the only potential real value in going taxation is going to be simply that it's going to be built into the mortgage cost and paid, and you don't have to worry about collecting a monthly fee from anybody. And that's about the only thing that a tax bond will do. You may get a slightly lower rate, but that you're a ways, year or 2 years out from making that decision. I guess that's about all I can tell you, unless you have questions.
I have a couple. We're currently, we have our lift stations in, we have our tanks in. The priority is looking at I&I water infiltrating into the system. On average, we're using 45,000 gallons a day to the lagoon. We have talked to some companies that are proposing 90 to 135,000 gallon plant, because that's really the smallest one you can get. And we don't have 3 years to look at, because we just had to have our lagoons inspected, and we're looking at some minor issues.
Okay. So let me give this for you to think about. Have you smoke tested the lines?
No, we can't do that because we're a total pressure system, and on a total pressure system, you cannot do that. Unless you were to go in,
So all your lines are
our whole system is a pressured system.
really,
So we got the septic tanks in
Yeah.
everybody's backyard. Hey Keith, come on here. We got the septic tanks in everybody's backyard.
okay,
They flush the toilet, solids stay in the septic. Effluent water flows over to the city-owned pump chamber in the backyards.
okay.
There's a pump in there, and when it gets to a certain level, the pump gets on.
So you're taking the gray water out of the system
Correct.
and processing the gray water. That's a unique scenario.
It's one of those things that started small years and
Yeah.
years and decades ago, sort of expanded.
Is there any way to isolate or shut off portions of the system?
Besides going to each individual's house and killing the breaker in the back that pumps. Because everybody has their own pump chamber. And a
Yeah,
pump in
yeah,
the
yeah.
backyard.
You got the pump that lifts it into where it goes flows in from the gravity feed from the septic tank into your gray water tank. Then you have a pump that pumps it up to whatever collection line you have. Right.
Correct.
What you don't know is where the infiltration inflows occur.
Yep.
And that's what you need to know. Because what you might be able to do, depending on the size of the line and the flow, you might be able to slip line that. If you can slip line it, then you're going to save yourself a ton of money.
Right.
And so you've got to find a way to isolate segments of it so you can smoke test it. There's a gazillion ways to smoke test it. Do you have manholes into your system, or is it just all?
No manholes. I know the new development that was almost 90% done at Eagles Cove over there, that's the only part of the whole city of Lakeside City that's gravity. And it gravity feeds into a
Okay.
little grinder station that's over in that subdivision, and that grinder gets pressure fed into the rest of the pressure system.
Is there a way to force smoke into that line?
We could force smoke in, yeah, now, one of my recommendations was to smoke test, but Dean Hinton's our city engineer, and from what I gather, since our whole system is a pressure system, it would literally require going to everybody's breaker and killing everybody's breaker to do it. Because you can't isolate off certain things. Everybody has a shut-off valve at their house that goes into the main system.
Well, then that'd be what I would do first.
Okay.
I mean, your cheapest and your quickest fix right now is trying to find out where the infiltration inflow is occurring and see if you can either A, do a slip line, or B, cut out and replace that line. That's gonna be your cheapest first option. And if that meant sending everybody a notice that, and you can get some non-toxic smoke that won't harm anybody. And you just put out a notice that this date at this time, we're forcing smoke up the sewer line. It may come through your system. It's not hazardous. It's not harmful, but we need to have eyes on the ground that can spot and locate where the smoke is coming from. Yes, sir.
What about the smoke testing counts individually, their yard line? Because wouldn't, if it was a pressure line that was leaking, wouldn't it water be surfacing? Or would you be leaking out more than it?
You would think that if you had that pressure line, that the infiltration inflow would not be coming from it because you'd be losing pressure. And you would find a low pressure rise. So that water has got to be coming in to the system in some format.
It's when it rains, we go from 40,000 to 175.
So, all right, let me.
And we're in the, not to jump ahead of you, but one of the main things that they're focusing on right now is we're fixing to do complete septic inspection of everybody's home. That's one of the main things we don't have, and so it's like.
Then smoke it right there, yeah. Because so your system, there's gotta be a check valve where that gray water comes into your main line. There's gotta be a check valve there that prevents backflow.
Correct.
So anything coming infiltration has to be through that lateral line from the house or into the gray line tank. And so I think you're right on. You smoke test right there and find out. Now, you've got to decide how you're going to solve that problem. Is that going to be a homeowner problem, or are you stepping up to do the work?
So our thoughts were, have a mandatory septic tank, grease trap, pump chamber inspection on everybody's home. Document it, go through a sub check, and then the city would pay for that inspection, and then we'd come back and sort of give us a baseline. Hey, this home has a cracked septic tank, and this is one big problem with infiltration. This house is good to go. You really don't need to worry about this one, and sort of get a priority. And then that's where, once we get that baseline of who has the worst septic system or most, whatever you want to call it, then we start addressing those issues and go from there. From what our engineer thinks, just like he said, usually we can tell where there's a leak because it's a pressure system, so you're going to start noticing water, standing water, sewer smells, and all that.
Oh, yeah, and you're going to find probably the greatest occurrence is the clean out that doesn't have the top on it anymore.
Yes.
That's probably what you're going to find most often. But I have a friend that lives not too far away. He's in the clay, and he's had to replace, his system is, less than 2 years old. He's had to go back in and replace some lines because of the infiltration inflow. And it's flooding his system, and he doesn't have a gray water discharge. So what you're going to start having then is a backflow or a backing out. And this is why they unscrew the top is so that it bubbles out the top and comes out rather than in the house. In the top, the lid never goes back on. So smoke testing, each individual would be probably your best route. I would continue to pursue and look at the cost of a long-term study to find out how do you solve it, especially if the growth comes. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to deal with it? I'd also look at the aerobic system, the new sprayer type lift stations. They do really, really well.
You talking about for the final product?
For the homes, yeah. I had a city in the Metroplex that we didn't have a sewer system at all. None. Even our elementary and middle school was on a septic system. And what you had to do is it had sprinkler systems. Set up like a sprinkler system, and you came in about every month and you dropped 2 chlorine tablets down the tube. And when it was full, the sprinkler came over, sprayed the yard. It was good.
I have no clue on that, but isn't there a state regulation that for an aerobic system, you have to have so many acres on your home?
No, that it's going to be built to the size, should be built to the size of acreage that you have. You need to look at that. Typically, if you're going to stay with a lateral line system, especially in a lake area, you're going to want 2 acre minimums because it won't percolate as well. And when the soil gets wet and damp, the percolation goes, and up it comes to the top of the surface and runs off. With this spraying system, it's clean, it doesn't have an odor, or if it does develop an odor, it's because you didn't drop the chlorine tablets down. That's an alternative to look at. Pardon?
That'll happen a lot too. People don't have anything.
Well, yeah, in the city I was in, they had a guy made a living going around the house dropping tubes every month. So
But we're a third of an acre, we don't have, there's no 2 acres.
well, so you can't lateral line. That's your problem. You can't lateral line. So you have the gray tank system because you can't lateral line it out. I don't know whether you can make that system work on a 3rd acre. The little community we had 1 acre minimum lots, and we could get by on that, but there may be some problems. Take a look at it. Even if you had some open green space where you can move away from that to a lateral system, a community lateral system that would take everybody in by groups or blocks or areas, that would even help. But again, that's time and effort to study it, and you're telling me you don't have time, and you got a problem to get after right now.
I think one of our main concerns was just more or less the funding for something like this. I mean, putting a package plan in, coming up with the funds like that even, and so what you're saying, no grants available,
No.
via low interest loan.
No, you're.
No, I'm always been told that.
We make
You make too
Our
much
median
money.
income is too high.
Yes, your median income
That's
is,
been the problem for all of Orange County for any grading.
so you're not gonna qualify for the grant.
Yeah, that's.
And so what do you do next?
Right.
And it's either A, get the study and try to figure out the option, and you may not have that time, or B, you go to the smoke test trying to figure out who's got the big I&I problems, and then how do you solve, or how do you enforce the resolution of that problem? Now, I have over here, if you want to look something more permanent, I have a lot of loan data, state programs, what they are, even how much you can borrow over what period of time, all of that. So there is another 100 pages over there for you. In case you can't sleep at night, we'll have something to read. I don't know what else I can do to help you at this point. I'd be more than happy to try. But I think your smoke testing is your best option.
Okay.
What we were figuring was, if we can reduce the I, we might be able to buy some more time out of our legal.
Yes, that's what you'll do. If you'll reduce the I, you will buy time. And that time will then let you look at what do you do long-term, what do you do with growth, and how do you resolve future problems? Because that I solution is probably not a long-term solution.
Right.
You know, it's a Band-Aid right now to hold things off. I mean, there's hump issues that you're gonna have with it, there's check valve issues you're gonna have with it, there's just a lot of constant maintenance that you put on the back of the homeowner, and you have to have some way to find and locate that problem and put the homeowner on notice, and then ultimately forcing action on the part of the homeowner to resolve the problem.
Yeah, it's an ugly thing. If you want to fix the long-term thing, you have to do it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be constantly in the throes of what we do next. I would look at Texas Water Development Board. They have some low interest loans that will do a study for you and let you figure out, what do you need, what size, where you put it, what do you do about the surrounding growth that either may come into your city or may be a contributor to some of the problems. How do you control that? You do have some control over the extraterritorial jurisdiction. And so you're going to want to be able to implement the ordinances and rules in that extraterritorial jurisdiction so that they don't come in to impact you.
So you're saying if we were to annex other surrounding areas, are you saying like, say for instance, Bowman Triangle Estates is right outside of our city limits. What jurisdiction do we have over them?
Well,
Do we have anything over them, even though they're outside?
not because with them existing now,
Right.
but you can go to the county and reach an agreement that you will review the plans and implementations of any subdivision in your ETJ, and therefore you get to apply some of your rules to the building aspect. Because quite frankly, if somebody over across 79 wants to build and they have a fire, guess whose fire department's coming?
Right.
If they have street, guess whose street is coming? Guess who's going to get to pay the bill for it? It's gonna be y'all.
Right.
So in theory, you say, well, if we're gonna have to pay the bill for it, we might as well have at least a little input on how it develops. And that's just a simple agreement between your city council and the county commissioners.
Okay.
And you need that.
Right, no, I agree.
You need that. And you need to be able to outline what you want where and what kind of land use and what is the highest value land use to the city, because what's valuable to the city is not always valuable to the landowner. But you do have that ability to zone or to regulate that if you want. And I would strongly advise you, if you think that growth is coming and you want that growth to come, that you do those things. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't like zoning. Houston doesn't have zoning. You're right. Houston doesn't have zoning. I was city manager in the area at one time. Their subdivision ordinance is about that thick. They tell you how many footsteps is between one door to the next door. And they tell you what you can put on there. It's not zoning, you know. They just tell you what you can build and how you can build it. And so they don't have to have zoning, because they've written it in such a way that you're not gonna put a business in the middle of a residential, because the footstep and the traffic count won't fit into their model. So they just took a long way around not doing the zoning, is what happened. But you need to know these things. You need to be looking for these things. Because I'm telling you, when the lake gets cleaned up and gets a little higher profile, you're going to see people come out here wanting to access it, wanting to use it, wanting to develop around it. And unless you take control of it, you'll be paying the bill for it.
Right.
So, get it, I mean, really, really important.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When I talked to Tom Barnett, he's the manager of the practice team for the,
Yes.
okay. He talked to me about what I told him our situation, like I talked to you about. And he said that he wanted to bring a team in with engineers, his programming team, his loan team. He wanted to bring them down, but I thought it was too early to do that because we're not really set in any one aspect. Is it too early or not? Since you're thinking about a long-term study about growth.
I think, yes, sir, I think it's a little early for that, okay? I think what you really want to do right now is focus on the infiltration inflow. And then once you've got a better handle on it, then bring him in to help you. I think that what you're wanting is for the community to understand the problem and what your first step in solving this problem is going to be. And you know it's infiltration inflow on their lines. And again, my guess is probably 90% of it is caps off the lines out of the house to keep the backup from coming in. But you've got to know that. And you know, maybe even quicker than doing a smoke test is simply get permission to go out there and look. Go house to house and look and see if they got the lid off the line, you know, and just tell them, hey, you can't do this, and put the lid back on it and see what the net effect of the infiltration inflow is. That may be the simplest first step, because if it's not that, then you would be getting a lot of complaints of overflowing sewer, or you would, not that you could do anything, but you would see the plumber out here or the septic guy out here all the time. Because if you have the lid down and infiltration inflow, it's going to fill the tank, it's going to back up into the house, it's going to come out. You're not getting that. So that tells me the lid is off the pipe.
You know what we're getting a lot of? People aren't pumping out their septic tanks. Nobody knows to pump their septic tanks out. It's one of those, over the years, it's just sort of,
Yeah.
and so then that solids filling out, going into the city zone thing, and then causing a lot of problems. We replaced 93 pumps, only pumps, last year, you know, cost us $542. You figure out what that costs. You know, that's just a pump alone. That's not adding the PVC, the man hours, electrical,
Yeah.
all that. So it adds up pretty quick. But still, our hardest problem, and I'd love to know your input as a city manager and all that over the years. How do you convince most of the homeowners, are like, well, I've never had this problem before. How do you convince them, hey, here's where we're at, more or less just.
Well, the easiest thing to convince them is you can fix the problem you have, or we can fix it, and it'll cost you an extra $100 a month.
Gotcha.
Which way you want to go? You know, we can do it either way. What we can't do is nothing.
Yeah.
You don't want higher organizations coming in and helping you in those regards.
Correct.
Because they have no sympathy. So I would probably have my crew walk the houses, find out who's got the lid off of them. Who's got the lid off of them are the ones that you're going to have to go to first and say, okay, let's look at the smoke test, because that indicates to me that you're taking it off for a reason. We need to smoke it and find out how bad the infiltration is.
City of Wichita Falls, just 3 or 4 years ago, made it part of their code that the cleanout has to be 6 inches tall. The minimum 6 inches tall.
Make anything else 6 inches taller in the backyard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know people hate that.
Yeah, I don't believe me.
Yeah, it's ugly.
I'll put it in, I'll put it in, if I'll even cut it off.
Yeah. So that's the city of Wichita Falls thing.
Yeah,
See, that's it.
But that would be my first step. Walk the yards, look and see who's got a lid off, make a note of it.
And I think we're fixing our problem is, we got 2 utility workers, literally. That's all we got, and their day's pretty full already, so for them to do it, we're looking at bidding it out and having it done, outside contractor come in.
You can, or you can maybe hire some high school students in the next month or two, give them a couple of dollars and give them a map. Here's your 10 houses, go walk them and tell me what you find.
Yeah.
Um,
From what I get, TCEQ in the state regulates the certain inspections you can do and everything else. You can't just have Joe Blow, no license, come out and do an inspection.
no, they're not inspecting. All these kids are doing is looking to see whether the lid is off.
Oh, okay, just
That's all.
minimal things like that.
That's right. All you want to know, that's your first thing, is the lid off, because that tells you what the rest of the problem is.
Well, we have people that on more, they have concreted their septic system on the top.
Yeah, the
No
driveways
access.
over the tanks.
They have no tank. It's all concreted over.
You know, you can get a core drill and you can make an access.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And you can make your own.
but that's another issue we had. We've had the Wild West out here putting in stuff.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and they said, okay, I need my patio over here, and I'm gonna pour concrete over that septic tank.
it all goes back to enforcement, prior enforcement and stuff like that. I mean, it's one of those, we can't go back and change the past.
No.
We gotta, look at the here and now, and how can we fix it and still be there.
And that, you're right, that's what happens especially when the smaller cities start getting to be bigger cities.
Yep.
You've got to be able to flow with what you need and do with what you need. I have typically found that as long as everybody is treated the same.
Yeah.
And everybody knows the same rules, then everybody's okay. It's when you start making exceptions to the rules that you get in trouble.
Exactly.
And even with new growth, as long as they know what the rules are and they are equally applied and enforced, they'll live by them.
Right.
And I think that's what you've got to say is, okay, not picking on any one person, but we have to have access to your septic tank. It needs to be cleaned out. Now, how you want to do that, that's your problem right now. But we've got a problem that affects the entire community, and we can't be bottlenecked on this thing because you don't want to comply.
Correct.
Not an option.
Making a slab over the top of the septic tank should definitely be written in the city books that not allowed.
Yeah, it should, yeah.
Because it creates can create a methane pocket underneath.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So
A lightning strike or something.
that's the key. It is looking at that. Contact the city of Lucas, Texas, north of Plano. They're nothing but septic tanks.
Cool.
And they're $500,000 to $1 million homes. So,
I know when I built, we weren't allowed to put anything in because we were within so many feet of the lake.
That is typical, of lake communities, that you usually have a minimum of 10 or 12 feet from the shoreline that you can't intrude into. And a lot of communities that are lake communities also have runoff regulations, so that you have to prevent that runoff from going into the lake because they can't control it. I mean, if you've got your car and you have an oil spill and it runs into the lake, well, the detriment is done to the lake. And so there are often some very stringent rules from lake communities. That's one of the things you put up with if you want to live on the lake. I think you're on the right track with that.
Okay.
And I think you're probably on the only option you really have at this point. Again, I would encourage you to look at one of the loan packages, and I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be that one right there, but it may be one of the other ones. I've got about 6 or 7 loan packages printed out for you to look at. You want to get that planning loan and start that planning process. And you want to look at it in relationship to land use, water supply, and wastewater collection.
It's the deep ones.
And all three of them work together is why you want to group them that way. So you know what to do and when to do it and how to do it. Let me see what else I have for you.
One of the things that we looked at was, once we created this baseline and knew what we had, and we worked with the homeowners and, city council and all of that, was for the city to take over the pumping of the septic tanks. Therefore, and instead of the people paying $350, $375 to have their tank pumped, we charge $20 a month. And
That's an option. That's an option. That might be an affordable option. That may even be an option for you to try to reduce your infiltration inflow by stepping that process up while you are trying to smoke test or go after your loan. If you can financially do that, and if your citizenry, well, you could pass an ordinance requiring that, setting that fee. So you have the ordinance capabilities of doing that and enforcing that. I think that the key is communicating to your citizens what the problem is. I have found that the state agencies will work with you as long as they see you working towards the solution. When you quit working towards the solution is when they get nasty. So as long as you're making an effort, they're going to typically have given you the room to be able to make that effort. So I commend you for what you've done already. You've really shown a dedication to resolving the problem.
well, the surprise for you is we've been doing this 2 months.
Hey, you've come a long way in 2 months then.
Yeah.
You've done really good. Just
Now we're taking it to the public.
Yeah, the public education is going to be critical when you finally do decide which route to take. They have an understanding. And that does make it a little easier for them to figure out, other than the city just trying to beat us up on something. No, we've got a serious problem, and either we're going to fix it or the state's going to fix it. Now, who do you want to pay to fix the problem? Usually the state's not your first choice. So, again, I commend you for your hard work already. And I think you've got some very clear options laid out, and some clear choices. I would look at getting those college kids, high school kids, sign them a block and say, you don't have to do anything other than go look and see if the clean out is open or not. That's all I'm interested in. Make a note on the ones that are open, and make a note on the ones that are closed, and see what you gain.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Well, sure, I don't know that I've been any help to you. Buried you in paperwork.
Well, you validated some things that we're already in the works of doing, so that's good.
Good. Well, again, I strongly urge you to get that comprehensive land use plan, that plan done. It will save you tremendous amount of effort and time. And what you can do from that plan is then you can implement an impact fee. And the impact fee says, Mr. Developer, Mr. Builder, you're coming into our system, you're affecting our system, and it costs us X dollars to accommodate you, pay me. So the developer pays you to come into to alter your system to accommodate their flow. It's called an impact fee. And you can do the impact fee on water, sewer, and I believe roads as well. You do have to have engineering work to back up your numbers, but I would strongly encourage you to do that as well.
A ballpark on what one of these studies you've been involved with them in the past. I mean, are we looking at 50,000, 100,000?
Yeah, you're looking at a minimum of 50. I'm guessing 50 to 75,000. And I'm thinking it'll probably take minimum 6 months, maybe even longer.
But we can do our I&I stuff.
You need to keep on doing your I&I. You don't want to stop that. You want to show that continual motion to solve the problem, and this land use plan, sewer plan, water plan, road plan, whatever you want to call it, is really going to be beneficial to you. Go to the county, get the agreement with the county that anything that occurs in your ETJ, that they relinquish that control over to you. And that's a simple ordinance on their part, and a handshake to say yes. And so if I want to go out there and build a building on this property, I got to come to you people and say, here's what I'm going to do, and here's your rules I'm going to apply to, and get all that done. That's going to be one of your long-term protections, is getting that approved. And it's really should be a simple no-brainer.
Excellent. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'm always available. Let me know.
Thank you.
There's a ton more paperwork.
That's great.
All this grant loan information.
Your bodyguards didn't have anything to say?
No, he did good, don't you think?
Yeah. See you. Thank you so much for coming. Mario? Yes. Thanks, bud.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good
Joe.
to shake your hand, guys. Pleasure meeting you. If I can help in any way, call me. Thank you. I'll take care. Appreciate it.
We appreciate your coming.
Anytime, guys, I can help, let me know.
The only other things I got, I spoke with Jim Chafee, the guy from that, he had something come up, and so him and Dean are going back and forth between emails. He's trying to get solid figures to Dean. He definitely thinks we can get that number down from what Dean also agrees we probably can get it down quite a significant more than what was put in there. He's hoping to have some stuff back to Dean the first of the week, of next week. He's also going to give two proposals, both the MVVR, which he presented on there, and then they also do the advanced SDR. He's going to give a thing on that. And so hopefully they'll continue to work it out. I don't know, I know I emailed you all this afternoon. The new page for the website is up and running. I mean, it looks good. Now, it's not 100% done. There's quite a bit of stuff on there. It looks good. We're gonna do a big push on it when it's all done, sort of try to educate people on there. We're gonna try to come up with a FAQ on there. I know there's been a lot of questions, answers that we've already done, and that way that would be on there. My thoughts are we still put out the I&I, the inspection stuff for bid, just to get that back and see, put that into the council, let them.
We have to, we'll have to take a vote, but modify it for putting a cost for smoke testing.
Yeah, I don't want to, I would rather talk to a couple engineers. What do you know about smoke testing on pressure systems?
I don't know, that'd be more plumbers.
Yeah.
I don't think it's,
You don't have to suppose smoke test pressure systems.
yeah, I think you.
And I don't know really what you would get out of smoke testing at the yards. I mean, you're gonna.
That's what Dean told me. I don't want people saying, well, Eric said, because I mean, that's what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Smoke testing and clean out, you plug the house and trying to find your infiltration on the tank. It's still coming out least resistance, so it ain't gonna
Right.
react very fast.
So, yeah, I mean, you could do that, you plug the clean out the one in front of your house, and pump the smoke in, and who knows, you may find it coming out the ground at the corner of the house where they put in a little rain bill, and you can't see it. You know?
So look into
Just
this.
put it as an option,
People do
an
that,
alternate.
people do that all the time, tied to the sewer for, their gutters to go away.
Maybe I've seen it.
Retired firemen.
Yeah. I've seen it dump it right into the top of the leach shaft, and then it's our fault.
I don't want to assume we're gonna try and start these inspections, but I mean, the clean out cap could be easily just checked by those people, so they just.
Yeah.
plan.
Homeowner, in a postcard.
I think the city guys do a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
They got talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
A postcard with a check.
There's gonna be a lot of houses that won't have a clean out. Well, it does have a clean out, but, it may be.
Yeah, I just saw one the other day and it was buried. It's one of those things, hey, I'm all for sending postcards out, but how many people get it in the mail, look at it, throw it in the trash and walk on, get on it? I mean, I don't want, I think it's a good idea to still put the word out there.
Do we have an email list for the citizens of the city?
No, never had anything like that.
So this would be a perfect example of being able to send something, send a blast out.
They can delete emails as
They
easy
can,
as go to the
exactly, they can
postcard.
make it go to their spam folder and stuff.
We can, yeah, I'll definitely set something up like that.
And then, and the other thing I had was, we kind of need to know what format that we need to come to the city council with next month, as far as what we've done and what we're doing, so that we're fitting it into their niche of what they're trying to do budgeting for.
Right. I do know they all watch the meetings online and come back. Everybody's pretty much up to date. I'll give them updates and everything else. But yes, I'll ask them what they're expecting from y'all next month.
What format?
Okay.
Because we're, we know we got the I&I, we go, and, we just need to know, because we were tasked with August coming in at a 30,000 foot level and saying, this is where we're at, and these are the different directions that we can go. And I just need to, so that we know what we're doing in a report back.
We're still gonna try to have our public input meeting on the 11th.
Yeah, that's the next thing. I mean, we got it tentatively scheduled for August the 11th.
We're gonna do that here. need to have it in a larger area?
I'm game for whatever y'all want. We can definitely do it in here, and go from there. If you wanna ask a question, you gotta come in here and show up.
Have them send them.
Yeah, have them send the questions.
You wanna have it submitted,
So
we
we
can
can-
agree.
So we can
Something we
figure out.
might have to research, especially on the loan grants and everything. Not the grants, but the loan.
Yeah, because I'm sure there'll be some, questions.
And I'll be happy to show the guys,
5 minute.
I can show the guys how to do smoke tests. Yeah, you just, I mean, you just do a shot vac, put a wet towel in there and then a metal can and put
So obviously,
they make special smoke bombs.
Where that-
That's fly, it's fucking spouts.
That would be great,
You just
man.
drop there and then blow from the shot vac.
that'd be great. Email questions submitted. Obviously, the end is the 11th. When do y'all want to put a deadline on those questions, so y'all have time to vet them? Now, once I get them, I will definitely send them on to y'all, and y'all can all look at them, stuff like that, but I would think you would want a deadline, so it's not like somebody sending one at 5 o'clock that day, and we have a meeting at 6.
Well, we could take them anytime, they just have to understand they may not be answered.
Okay. So no deadline on them.
Well, they can be, I guess we could email them, the answer back to them.
Okay.
And a later date.
Or add it to the
Well-
FAQ online.
I still think there needs to be an option for them to come in person if they want to.
Yeah, I agree.
There, we got to have something big enough where you have social distancing.
Yeah.
Cut off, shut off.
So you're saying hold it here? I mean,
Wherever. I mean, I'm just not sure where, if we need a social distance to spread people out.
Could we-
Do an RSVP and we can set the,
thing there.
by how many people
I would
RSVP.
need an RSVP 72 hours in advance, so we can post when we can have it. I mean,
You do it in church, like you said.
the church is sort of, they're doing parking lot gatherings right now there. I mean, the only other option, we could take some speakers and set some chairs up outside and do something outside. I mean, that's an option. No, believe me, I'm just trying to prevent any excuses of people saying, oh, well, we can have a meeting. because-"
just have them wait outside and we were here and one at a time?
No. Let's get it in.
That's good. Let them have
They
it.
can wait in their car with their conditioner on.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea. If there's a lot, then you can do a Zoom where they call in, and so if there happens
Yeah, a
to be
live
a lot,
Zoom.
then they could always call it in like that, and then the ones that, if it's not,
But there are gonna be some people that are not capable of doing Zoom.
right.
We can definitely set up the Zoom and do
Or
it.
limit one member per household. One member per household.
Yeah.
Well,
People calling.
you're
You're not gonna have that.
not gonna have that many, but, you might have 5 for one household.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna type up all these sort of things that we have, and at the next meeting, y'all can look at them, sort of prove it, and we'll put it on the.
Will the church let us use their fellowship hall?
Well, that's what he was saying. They're doing a parking lot.
Yeah.
They're not letting.
Yeah, they're doing parking lot services
Oh.
right now.
I don't know, maybe that's-
Baptist churches.
I'll be glad to ask them.
That's for them, we must.
Yeah.
And make everybody wear a mask. I'm sorry, that's, where we live in now. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies now that you can't go in the store without
That's
one.
all.
What other, the last one was other questions, concerns, ideas, the sewer task force committee members. Anything else y'all want to talk about, discuss? So I think we're pretty much all in agreement. There's not any grants out there, and I sort of thought that, just our per capita income. I know I said that in the council meeting here a while back. But I'm open to ideas, whatever y'all want to do, exhaust all options.
First thing we've got to do is take care of the I.
Yep, I agree 100%. I think you're exactly right.
The first thing to do is take care of the II. 2 is get the study, if we can. And 3, there's loan, you've got to remember, the loans or the grants, or the loans, are 2 years ahead. So you've got to remember, whatever you put in now, it's 2 years.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a quick thing, but by
Right.
having that impact of what's going to happen and have some guidelines from the county, and we have that in place, we can have a better determination. Like I asked Joe about Tom coming in, because he wanted to come in.
Mhm.
And I said, no, hold off, we're just at the thinking stage right now, we're not implementing anything, but he said he wanted to bring in his team. And that's the Texas Water Council, so, Water Committee. And he recommended grants, it's the same grants Joe did.
Okay.
But you've got to remember, you've got to write the grant, it's proposed in 2 years, it will be approved or disapproved.
And Tom was with Wichita Falls for years. Years and years.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
So, I think since we're that far down, we don't know what we want exactly, like the plan or anything else. By having that survey of the I already taken care of, we can have a better idea of what kind of facility we need. That's just my opinion.
Right.
How soon are the developers that you talk to, how soon are they going to start?
Well, that's all, what I've told them is we're not looking at anything or taking them on until we get our sewer situation solved and fixed. And so, now, if they want to do something on their own, that is up to them.
Would this be something we had Larry was talking about?
Yeah, yes.
Talk to county in advance.
Y'all need to step out, talk. I can step out and talk.
No, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
ETJ or whatever it was.
ETJ.
I would like to have that, the so-called Lakeside Central, in our ETJ.
Yeah. I agree.
What's ETJ look like?
And your territorial jurisdiction.
I mean, that's, is there a set distance for that, or?
From what I get, it's any land bordering your city limits.
I mean, that should go farther out, I mean,
2 miles.
a 2 mile distance
Yeah,
from, yeah, okay.
What the, I don't know that answer.
The county can.
Yeah.
So that's what you and the county discuss.
County commissioners, I think, adopt, us taking over.
But we have our county commissioner.
Because I don't think Arthur County is going to have the money to say, hey, Arthur County, you got a couple of million for it?
I think the problem I see is if our extraterritorial jurisdiction reaches down to Carter Road, how far down the road
I mean, if you go based off the calls that the VFD takes and how far out they go in the area, it's pretty much.
I mean, I don't know how far we can limit our ETG, or if we can, so that we're not messing with those folks down there. Those folks down there, they don't want to be messed with. I can guarantee you that.
Anything else? That's all I got.
Motion to adjourn. Second.